before I begin talking about the right to self-determination of the Sahrawi people, similarly to my colleagues, I would like to share a short video with you to give you a comprehensive short information about the history of Western Sahara and the beginning of the conflict, so we can all have an equal understanding, hopefully. Your question, where is the Spanish representation? Where is the UN representation? Where are the US and the other ex-colonies? I guess they're doing business somewhere else.
Of course.
And the question of Western Sahara, and unfortunately, if you look, and I'm going to talk specifically about Western Sahara, if you look into International Court of Justice, the UN General Assembly, and all the created laws of our world today, they all acknowledge that we have the right to self-determination. But why are we not allowed to exercise this right? Why do I have to live in the refugee camps from the day I was born until this very moment, and I'm not allowed to exercise this right? Why? It's because of economical interest. It's because of, if in the case of Western Sahara, there's no place I have been into, there's no discussion I've been into. I've talked in the UN, I've talked in so many countries, and Every time the Moroccans are there, they want to deny this right. They don't want me and my people to say and to have a say over our own future, our own resources, our own land. And of course, because they have big influential countries in their back, and in the case of Western Sahara is Spain, is France mainly, also Spain. And if we look at the profit they generate every year from the resources of Western Sahara, we can say clearly why we cannot exercise this right. So the question is not about, do we have this right? We have this right. And they all acknowledge it. If you sit with them, yes, you have the right. But in other words, they're saying, but our money, our security, our stability is more important than you exercising this right. Because if I look into the question of my land, of my people, we've given everything possible. We've given everything. We fought peacefully since 1991. My people in occupied territory are being tortured, are being imprisoned for simply saying and demanding that they have the right to self-determination. Me and my people who live in the refugee camps in southwest Algeria, we've been fighting quietly without any international attention, trying to make Western countries to see, okay, there is a nation sitting here in peace waiting for you to give them the right to self-determination. I guess the answer is like, we have to do something else. As minorities, as countries who have been denied the right to self-determination, we have to do something else because they are not listening to law. They are not listening to the law they created by themselves. So I guess for us, to speak about my own generation, about my own people, we believe in peace. And we've tried every possible way to get the international attention and get our right peacefully, but unfortunately it's not going anywhere. And as a young activist, I have 6 young brothers, beautiful young men, and I call upon all of the countries who have power to do something to finish this dispute peacefully, because there is not enough energy anymore to generate hope and peace. So it's really...
You have been unsung victims. You have been ignored for much too long. And it is important that somebody tells you you do have a case. That the Tamils and other peoples aspiring to self-determination are having numerous side events at this 42nd session of the Human Rights Council. Unfortunately, and I've been at several of these events, where are the state delegations? Where are the representatives of Sri Lanka, or of Morocco, or of the United States, or of France, Spain, etc., who should be listening to you as victims of the violation of the most fundamental human right to self-determination? That worries me. Now, you know that I wrote back in 2014 a study on self-determination, A/69/272, which was presented to the General Assembly. I subsequently wrote a report to the Human Rights Council, A/HRC/37/63, in which I formulate 23 principles of international order, among them the realization of self-determination as a conflict prevention strategy. Needless to say, the peoples or nations living under occupation suffer day by day the indignities of being discriminated against and being treated as second-rate citizens. And that applies, of course, to the Tamils. That is scandalous enough. It applies to the Western Saharans, to the Sahrawis. It applies to the Igbos of Biafra, the Ogoni people. It applies to the Kurds. It applies to the Corsicans, who also aspire to self-determination. It applies to the Catalans. And in many of these cases, we have seen violence. Violence against the Palestinians in the occupied territories, violence against the people of Gaza, illegal blockades, people who were made to starve. Jean Ziegler wrote a book called We Let Them Starve. And it doesn't seem to move the powers that be in the Human Rights Council. On occasions, you have, as just mentioned, a decision, judgment, advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that confirms the right of self-determination. Take, in the colonial case, or decolonization context, the Chagos Island advisory opinion we've just seen. But we have in the non-decolonization case, Kosovo. The Kosovo advisory opinion of 2010 is hugely important because it says in paragraph 80 very clearly that territorial integrity, every time it's used in UN resolutions, is exclusively in the context of interstate relations. Meaning it cannot be used internally to prohibit the exercise of self-determination. In other words, self-determination is superior, is a jus cogens peremptory right, whereas territorial integrity is only a principle of international law, which is subject to change, to negotiation, etc., etc. Of course, what international law provides and what we see in the real world are two different things. There have been war crimes, crimes against humanity committed in Sri Lanka against the Tamil people, in Biafra against the Ogoni people, in Western Sahara, in Kurdistan, etc., etc. And we have a huge problem of impunity. For whatever reason, I have been convoked tomorrow and after tomorrow by the German parliament because they're holding hearings on the issue of impunity. Mm-hmm. And I have every intention to use as examples the impunity of the Sri Lankan authorities for the crimes committed against the Tamil people, the impunity of Indian authorities for the crimes committed against the people of Kashmir, for the impunity of Israeli officials for the crimes committed in Gaza and in the occupied territories of Palestine. Now, every little bit helps. As I said, I'm disappointed not to see lots of young interns from the missions of the US and others. I mean, I am optimistic when I see someone with a little computer, maybe he's an intern and he's going to report to the mission. So it seems like many countries have chosen the strategy of just ignoring self-determination as if it didn't exist. I mean, like the Spanish government says, self-determination doesn't exist in Spanish law. Self-determination was finished with decolonization. Well, we know that that is not the case. We know that there are literally hundreds of peoples who have a legitimate aspiration to achieve a measure of self-determination, whether it be internal or external, whether it be by way of federalism and autonomy, or by way of secession. In any event, I'm here basically just to show you my solidarity, because I think